Hi, this is Dr. Stephanie Farwell, naturopathic doctor, bone therapist, Reiki master. Today I wanted to come on today and talk about stress. Uh, One of those things that we're all affected by all the time, some of us more than others. But stress is one of those things that is very common and kind of downplayed when it comes to your health. So, stressors come in two forms. Basically, you have your acute stress. So, basically, something happens like your little one gets sick and you're obviously stressed out, or you have a deadline at work, that kind of thing. That's more of an acute stress. Most of the time, that is not very problematic for acute stress, unless it's a very obviously strong trauma, and it's the body can deal with that well. And it's acute stress the body actually does deal with extraordinarily well, um, in general. But when it comes to long-term chronic stress, that's what I'll be talking about. So long-term chronic stress on the body can cause a lot of different a lot of issues in the body in general and in long-term kind of thing. So chronic stress applies to things like worrying about work, for example, all the time, or your children, or I hate to say there's a long-term illness in the family, or you're under long-term stress or illness. These things are more chronic. Some of these things you can actually do something about, and I'm going to talk about things we can do something about, right? So number one, what are the things that chronic stress can actually cause or eventually lead up to? And not so fun cardiovascular disease, diabetes. The reason why is because cortisol actually adversely affects insulin and its function. And it also causes kind of like a thickness in the blood, which can lead to different cardiovascular incidents. So that's one thing. Immunity is another one. A lot of people don't think of, but if you think about it, when you are stressed out more often, you'll notice that you get colds or flus, or sometimes you're around people who are sick and you never get sick, right? And all of a sudden, one year you've been particularly stressed out, and every time someone gets a sniffle, you're like, oh no, I'm gonna get sick, and you get sick. The reason why is because the cytokines that are released from your immune cells are actually diminished. Their function is actually diminished in when there is chronic inflammation in the body, or around the stress hormones of the body. So that's another thing that you want to think about. Immunity is going to be greatly diminished when you're stressed out. So think also around winter. We have a few double whammies there. So that's another good reason to try to really keep the stress levels down. Another thing that it can actually lead to, believe it or not, is things like leaky gut. So leaky gut, again, is I went over, if you want to go my video before about leaky gut, if you want to know more about it, the tight junctions between the cells are what keeps those, the bacteria and toxic things out of the body. But when cortisol is around, the little holes in the junctions start to form. So if you think of Red Rover when we were a kid, Red Rover, Red Rover, I call whoever over, you know, cortisol is kind of like that kid that runs and it doesn't quite make it through, and then eventually one of them makes it through. Well, that's what that does. So it actually increases the likelihood of having leaky gut or any issues with leaky gut. So cortisol, yay, cortisol. Cortisol can act as a good thing, but when it comes to stress, chronic stress, it obviously works against us. And number four, sleep disruption. We all know when we're stressed out, we can't sleep, or at least that's definitely my case. Or if we're worried about something, or if our children aren't well, that kind of thing. But sleep disruption obviously causes a lot of issues, right? Memory issues, fatigue. And let's be honest, when you're tired, you usually don't reach for the really, really healthy foods. You kind of reach for the more convenient foods or the fast foods. You don't feel like cooking, you don't feel like preparing your food. So, sleep disruption is one of those things that, especially if you're trying to do or get into a healthier lifestyle, that you really have to address. It's one of those things you really, and if you can address it through the tips I'm giving you here, consider seeing a naturopath or like a herbalist or something, or someone like that, to help you figure out if there's certain remedies that you can take in the short term to help you with your sleep in the long term. So those are the things that it can cause. Now let's get to the fun stuff. How can we get rid of this stress busting? How can we get rid of this stress that we're obviously always going to have? First is, the mental things. You know, I hate to say it, but sometimes I really have to sit down, or you really have to sit down and be like, okay, is this really worth stressing about? Is it something that I can do anything about? And be honest, if you can do something about the stress, do it. Don't delay, right? Start making the decisions that you have to make in order to address this underlying stress, because it's causing a lot of health issues underlying that you don't want to have to deal with in the long term, right? So another thing is, can you ask for help? I mean, if you're overwhelmed at home or at work, can you ask for help? Um, can you ask for help with some childcare, family, or with spouse or friends, that kind of thing? Can you ask for help? Because sometimes you just get overwhelmed and you feel like you can't do everything. Another thing is, can you say no? Right? Sometimes, we get overwhelmed because we're trying to do everything, we're trying to help everyone, but sometimes we just don't have it in us. So there are times in our life where we got to be a little more selfish and be like, you know what? I don't even like to use the word selfish. Just mindful of self, right? So knowing that, today's not the day. I've had a sleepless nights the last week because of da 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 da, and I don't have it in me, so I'm gonna have to say no, or I'm gonna have to pass, that kind of thing. So things like that can actually reduce stress, other than just doing physical things, right? So journaling is another thing that actually is good for, I find, kind of sorting out your thoughts, figuring out where the stress is coming from, figuring out the beliefs that you have that might be causing stress, that it might be totally false stuff. Things that you're thinking that really doesn't really apply to you or the situation. So other techniques is things like deep breathing, meditation. I know everyone talks about meditation, but I can tell you, if you do put meditation in your life, your stress will decrease dramatically in time. At first, when you're trying to learn meditation, some people get frustrated. That's normal. Oh well, right? Even deep breathings. Some people, I just start with 5 deep breaths before bed. It's better than nothing, right? The body will be like, thank you. Thank you for giving me that breather. But I do a lot of follow meditations, like directed meditations, especially when you first start out. But if you do that, you'll notice that you're calmer, your mind is clearer, and you actually get much better sleep. Much better sleep. So that's one thing I also usually suggest. Go outside. I know it's cold, so it's not as fun some days, but bundle up, go outside, take a walk, look at the beautiful lights out right now. We like going to the Waterloo Park to take a look at the lights there. Um, let's go outside, get in nature, get in the fresh air. That's another thing that just calms the body right down. It's one of those things, again, it's kind of undervalued, I guess. Take a bath, right? I'm a big bath person. Epsom salts with magnesium helps to relax the body greatly. It is actually a ritual for me, especially in the winter. Especially after a long day in clinic, it helps me to reset and release all the energies that I was around that day. So it's a very good thing. And journaling, get a journal. Me and my journals. But there's a reason why I have so many. It helps keep me straight. It helps keep me calm, usually, because then I can see what I'm thinking. I can see what my goals are. And so it's not constantly on my mind, right? And it also helps me figure out what my next steps are. Especially being an entrepreneur, having my own business, you kind of have to have that. So anyways, those are the tips that I have for decreasing stress. And of course, we can't avoid all stress, but we can avoid the little things. And quite honestly, it's mostly the little things that just pile up that are really the problem. So sit down, take a look at that. If you want help with even dealing with higher stress situations, natural medicine can really help. They have wonderful remedies to help you deal with shorter stress, long-term kind of thing. And even modalities like Bowen or acupuncture work really, really well in those situations too. So if you want help with that, you can look at my services at www.stephaniefarrellnd.ca. And again, I'm a naturopathic doctor, I'm a Bowen therapist and Reiki master, and I've been in practice for over 12 years now. And if you're interested in my services, go there. And I hope these tips helped. I have a blog on this as well on my website, which also has a recipe for a lovely chamomile tea that you can have that also helps with stress, sleep, that kind of thing. I mean, of course, if you're on medications, you shouldn't be taking chamomile, but otherwise, it's a great tea to have. So hopefully these tips helped, and I hope you have a great day. Goodbye.